the right button, yeah. After this, Caroline, Janice did get in, and she's wishing you happy.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Remind me to repay the favor one day.
Not make me a bouncer.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome to our July WIT event. We've got quite a nice bunch of new people joining us for the first time today, which is amazing. For those of you that are not 100% sure what WIT stands for, it's Women in Technology. And basically, we're just an organization of like-minded women that for the last 4.5 years have been meeting. BC, we used to meet in person every second month, and then after March, we now meet virtually every month. And essentially, we use this as a network to just educate, inform, network, encourage, and to drive awareness and opportunity around getting more women into the field of technology, as broad as it is. I always use myself as an example. I'm an HR manager, and I talk about myself being in technology. Okay. So it's one of those where there is no, like, we don't expect you to be able to code to be a part of this group of like-minded women. This is just people that use technology, work with technology, in technology, and we are trying to create more opportunity and awareness. And then sharing information and sharing knowledge. So we've had some fantastic events. And today I'm really excited to introduce these 5 awesome ladies to you. The circumstances that we find ourselves in at the moment certainly have given rise to people reconsidering their income, reconsidering what they're doing with their life. Like, do you really want to be stuck in a job? And then also looking at what can I do? Like, what are my options? What are my opportunities? And there's no better way to answer those questions than to ask and listen to people who run their own business. And some of these ladies have been doing that for 16 years, and others started a year ago. So we have a wonderful spread of experience, and I'm going to introduce you all. I'm going to introduce them to all of you, and then we're going to get started. So if I can just quickly do some housekeeping rules. If you don't mind turning off your cameras now, it's just going to be the my 5 panelists are going to keep their cameras on. You can use, throughout the entire event today, you can use the chat to ask questions. Karika is going to be our moderator and just put her hand up when there's some questions. But the format of today is very chilled. We've got some questions that they're going to discuss and answer individually, and then we're going to have a group discussion and then go back to individual. And along the way, you guys can also ask questions. So please go ahead. But without any further ado, let me introduce these ladies. So in good tradition of using an online tool, I'm going to ask, can you all see my presentation? So Caroline, you are in my window right now, so just give me a thumbs up.
I can, Lou.
Okay, cool. So entrepreneurs in 2020. And just quick question, how many people can spell entrepreneurs right the first time? Nobody. Okay. So first up, this is in alphabetical order because that's obviously the only way that you introduce people correctly. So Caroline, Keyline Digital Media, this happens to also be our longest running entrepreneur, 16 years, Caroline said. So long enough to really have experience running her own business and the ups and downs that go with it, and whether you stick it out or cave. She was also, throughout that time, she has got married and had 2 children, which have obviously impacted her business. But Caroline's core focus has just been around enabling other companies and businesses to get their business onto a fully digital marketing platform. So that's Caroline. Next up, we have Gaylin. Gaylin, I can talk from a personal experience because Gaylin has worked very closely with our company for the last 1.5 years. And she has an amazing insight into leadership and communication and social capital. And Gaylin does some very exciting team building exercises, but most, I'm sure you're all reading in front of you, around Lego. And there is nobody that doesn't love playing with Lego. So it's a win. But where we got to know Gaylin very well is through the Game Changer Index, which was really great. So Gaylin works very closely with companies around leadership development and strategy and giving purpose to your team. And next up, we have Hayley, who's our money lady. WIT is an organization, I have spoken about them before. Hayley actually also presented in the beginning of the year, so she got everybody's interest piqued when she was talking about debt and debt management. But Hayley's business WIT is around essentially financial education and well-being, which can be done by individuals or organizations. And it's a huge passion of hers to really improve people's life, and she can give, and I'm sure she will give us the statistics and facts about the status of South African finances, and it's eye-opening and jaw-dropping. But what is awesome is that Hayley does have solutions. So that's Hayley. Next up, we have Van. So Vanessa is a talent hunter. She's very well known, a global presenter. She's, in fact, Van, if I'm not mistaken, you were supposed to be in Portugal or another exciting foreign country presenting and participating in SourceCon and other significant events. So Vanessa's main passion is around changing the view of the recruitment industry and looking at how we can partner with recruitment rather than look at it as a necessary evil. And you'll see there, I've included one of her pictures because it's a beautiful picture, and her side hustle is wildlife photography. So really, really beautiful. And last but not least, we have Mankwe Sithole from Brand Code, and another business with purpose. Mankwe's organization is around assisting brands in raising their profile and also just serving a purpose, creating authenticity with those organizations. So these lovely ladies are our presenters today, and they are going to be discussing, we have some questions for them that we're going to put straight to them. We're going to get started. I'm going to turn my camera off so as not to be any distraction as I sip my wine. And so yeah, I'm gonna start and ask you, even though I have done a slide introduction for you, I would just like to ask each of you to start off by telling us why, besides me twisting your arm to present today, why participating in an event like this is something that you were really keen to do. So Van, I'm going to start with you because you are bottom right of my screen.
Perfect. To stick with the quotes of 2020, can everybody hear me? So the question there was, why did we want to be part of your panel tonight? Well, I think, Law, if I'm not mistaken, you reached out to me and you said, let's start. Would you be happy to present? I want to get some entrepreneurs on, and would you like to do a presentation? And at that point I was stressed, but that was about a month ago. I didn't know what stress was because the last few weeks have been even more stressful. But instead of putting together a presentation, I said, let's have a discussion, because I just found that I learn better from a discussion, and you can get more people onto a panel, and I believe that everyone's got something of value to add. So the reason why I'm here is I love to give back. I love to share, and I would hate anyone to be sitting on the fence thinking, should I go out there? Should I do it? Should I open my own business? Maybe what I say tonight is going to give them the push in the right direction, or the confidence needed to go and do it, because you just have to do it, in my opinion. And also, I'm more than willing to share where I went wrong, because you do go wrong, and I don't want anyone else to waste their time going down the wrong direction. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions either tonight or after tonight. So just let me know.
That's awesome. Thanks, Van. Mankwe, you're up next. No, you're on mute.
That's another COVID issue, isn't it? Well, I'm here partly because Gaylin roped me in. Her and I often have very lengthy conversations around conscious capitalism, organizations with a social conscience, and we are very much aligned with that sort of thinking, and we spend hours in meetings talking about such issues. And I think second to that really is similar in terms of sharing my own journey. For me, it's 5 years in, and there's a lot that I've learned in the last 5 years. And I feel like entrepreneurship tends to be a lonely journey if you're not sharing the highs and the lows with people. And often the certain things that I would have loved to have heard from someone before I embarked on this daunting journey. And if we can save someone a headache of trying to figure out the do's and don'ts, then why not share what I've learned in the last 5 years?
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Mankwe. Gaylin, you're up next.
Thank you. Mankwe and I have fascinating conversations. It's really awesome. And I think part of the conversations we often have are around how work can be better, and a lot of people get up in the morning and they're working off to a job or loading up the PC, and it's not an ideal job, or they're not doing something that they love. And I think one of the opportunities that having a small business presents is to do more of what you love, depending on what you like to do. So coming onto a panel like this and sharing your own story of that just helps other people to see what future paths might be out there for them. So the more you can talk to your own experience and what's happened and what's worked and what you celebrate and what's terrible, the more it gives other people a chance to maybe get ideas. So that's quite exciting for me to be here.
Awesome, thanks. We most definitely are going to touch on failures and how you've handled failure, because I think it is a significant aspect of what is required to make a go for it. So thank you. Caro?
To be honest, mine was very selfishly motivated, because I had a look at the individuals that were coming onto the panel, and there's so much to learn from just the other people sitting on the panel. If anybody gets anything out of what I say, that's a bonus for me. But really, I'm just here to be a sponge and just absorb other people's experiences. If there's something that I've been through that does help someone, great. But there's every day there's an opportunity to learn and to be better. And whether you 5 years down the line or 16 years down the line, I'm definitely not getting it right yet. So if I can pick up some tips, that'd be awesome.
Thank you. Fantastic. And last but not least, Hayley.
Yeah, so from my side, Lauren, my personal story is that there was one moment in my former corporate career where I sat in the car park and my dread for walking into the office was such that I actually had to have a pep talk with my legs. Like I actually had to look down at my legs and say, right, now you're going to move, get out of the car to go into the building. And I think for me that was like a pivotal moment for me, and that changed certain things about what I was prepared to accept and not accept going forward. And So I think within that context, I've always been quite passionate about entrepreneurship in general. And then I think there's two aspects to it. One is that I did it in a vacuum. So I did it without support, and that was really, really dumb. So the ability to have a platform like this or a panel event like this where we can share and learn from one another is just top class. But from where we stand today as South Africans, I am very passionate about the power an individual can make to changing the future of the circles that we operate within, the communities we operate within. And I think if we, by some miracle, help encourage the creation of just one business from this panel, I think that would just make me like enormously happy. So that's my background.
That's fantastic. So I'm sure everyone listening to us can agree that we've got a wealth of knowledge and experience on the panel this afternoon. And I'm going to launch right into a unique take on who you are and what your business is. But the question I have for you is, why did you start your particular business? What was the need that you saw? And I'm going to start, Vanessa, with you, because your business, your own business, is the toddler of the group for now. But probably in terms of what you've achieved in the last 15 months, there and thereabouts, it feels more like it's been around for about 15 years. Yeah, Van, but what was your purpose? What was the reason that you opened your particular business?
Sure, good question, Law. And maybe I'm the toddler of the group. I mean, I don't know. I've got a birthday next week. Maybe then I'll overtake some people. But I doubt it. I think what I saw an opportunity. And I think that's the biggest thing about opening a business. I've known for the last 3 years that what I was doing was great and it was fun, but it wasn't challenging me or stimulating me. It was paying the bills. I wasn't getting the same fulfillment as I had been getting previously. And I had a turning moment where, probably to the company's detriment, they sent me to a sourcing conference in Budapest, and I discovered what sourcing was. And sourcing, in a nutshell, is just the beginning part of identifying talent, reaching out to passive talent, and persuading them to leave where they're probably quite happy in a job to join another organization. And what I realized was that sourcing was a global thing, but it hadn't hit South Africa yet. So my motivation was twofold, is that I want to bring the story of sourcing to South Africa. And second of all, I want to raise the profile of the recruitment industry in the country, because I was tired of being lumped in with the secondhand car salesman and the estate agents, and all due respect to those professions. But you know what I mean? I wanted to make a difference. And then I started, when you're a standalone recruiter in a company, you don't mix with other recruiters. You don't know what other people are doing. And I hadn't realized that there weren't recruiters out there who were finding candidates like I was. Everyone was just relying on job boards and LinkedIn. No one was thinking Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, Kaggle, Instagram, all of these amazing places you can find great candidates. And for me, it was realizing that I had this opportunity. I had to literally grab it with both hands and run with it. And that was kind of what gave me that final push and confidence to leave. And then since then, the business, as you say, has grown. I've managed to, get international very quickly with it. And I think also because sourcing is new from a global perspective, but it wasn't even a thing in South Africa. And that for me is what anyone who's sitting there thinking about what they need to do is, what is that one thing that you can make a difference with? What can you take to market that nobody else is offering? And that for me has been the best thing that I've ever done, is realizing is that no one else was doing it and everyone else was quite far away from doing it. I hope that helps.
Yes, absolutely. I especially like around making a change because you were no longer being challenged or stimulated. I think that's significant. I'm sure the other panelists will have something along those lines in terms of what was the impetus to move. Mankwe, from your side, what was the reason that you went and did something as niche and focused as brand code? Mute. I'm going to.
It's okay. I think for me, what really drove it for me was that I had been working in corporate South Africa in very senior brand management roles. And then I shifted and I worked in boutique agency consulting environment as a strategist. And I realized that the two worlds hardly ever come together in one individual. You know, you always either wear a very formal marketing hat or a very creative hat. And I found myself loving both spaces, both as a strategist and both as a marketer. And it felt like an opportunity to combine both strategy and design in one person. And then as I was going along the lines of thinking about it, I also realized that what was happening in my consulting space was that often service providers would miss why organizations exist. You know, they would miss what is it that they're really trying to get out of their offering. And it really, I really realized then that there is really a gap in helping organizations articulate who they are, why they matter, and why should people really go out there and buy into who they are, and not necessarily buying into their products and services, but buying who they are as an organization. So brand code was really derived out of helping organizations unpack who they are from the inside out. Once you've understood who you are from a character perspective as an organization, what you stand for, you almost create a boundary for what you are able to do and not able to do. You know, you're able to make decisions because if it doesn't fit the ambit of who you are as an organization, then it's a no-brainer, then you don't want to do it. So for me, brand code was really when purpose, strategy, and design collided. And in that, I found what I thought was niche and different. And that's why I really started it.
So I think, I mean, one of the things that you've mentioned there is really clear, is that a lot of organizations are trying to do everything themselves, you know, startups and young businesses and small businesses. You know, you've got somebody who's the general manager and the finance person and the marketing person. They're trying to do everything, and essentially they fail. And you've come along to help them on that storytelling journey.
Yeah.
This, you know, this is our story. Which I think is hugely significant, because a lot of small businesses don't see the value in that until it's too late.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Hayley, what about you?
So, Lauren, from my side, I came from a background in media, in particular in financial media. And so I had this cool job where I got to see what people loved to read on our websites. And I'm talking about thousands and thousands of people. And it never ceased to amaze me the thirst that people had for personal finance articles that were aspirational in nature, like where you're talking about how do you help someone build wealth, how do you help someone get ahead financially, and it was something that I was passionate about even then. And what happened next was just a complete fluke of timing and circumstance, and probably not very dissimilar to like having a pandemic land on your doorstep that you didn't see coming, right? But I had sold my first business to Media 24 and done my earnout, but had decided that I would go into a different business within the group, because I was keen to start having a family, and I thought, you know, maternity leave and that kind of thing would be a good option to have. And I was quite senior, so I had some flexibility, and I thought it would be quite nice and stable while I wanted to make other changes in my personal life. And of course, the universe showed me the middle finger, and I got retrenched when I was 3 months pregnant with my first child. And, you know, what that did was it forced my hand. And to this day, when I look back, I think, would I have started another business? Would I have left the comfort of maternity leave and a bit of flexibility because I was quite senior and all of those things that I thought at the time were quite important? And I don't know the answer to that, but that's why I'm saying don't discount what happens when life throws you a curveball, because it could be, once the dust settles, it could be the greatest opportunity that ever happened to you.
Absolutely. I think just exactly that, turning lemons into lemonade. It's amazing what happens when you think you know what you want, and then circumstances happen and make you see that wasn't what you wanted. Awesome. Caro, what about you?
Well, if Van's the toddler of the group, I must be the granny of the group. But yeah, I've got to scratch my head quite hard to remember all those years back when I first started. But I kind of fell into it, to be honest. I didn't really know what web development was all about until I got placed into a job as part of a careers program. And I got back from a sporting event, and I decided I needed something besides sport in my life, and thought now's the time to get started. Actually, one of my sponsors gave me the shove that I needed to get into my own business. And just as I started, I realized that, in 2004, the internet, sort of web development and everything was quite new in South Africa. It was really gaining some momentum, but it always seemed to be only available to the bigger companies who had the budget to spend the money on what was exorbitant fees to get online. And there was this big gap for those small to medium-sized businesses who really just needed a presence, a good presence, and another leg in their business that was going to generate sales or help grow their business. And I've got a marketing background. I did an IMM years ago, and I just saw this opportunity to work with the business owner and add a leg onto their business that could really make a difference to their entire business, but predominantly, obviously, their bottom line. And I just grabbed that with both hands and have been doing that since.
So again, just sharing the sentiments, especially with Mankwe, where you've taken that journey to assist other companies, and I think that's something that certainly in your 16 years you can see now. Probably people have more inclined to see the value of using somebody like yourself rather than trying to do it themselves. In the early days of the internet, I'm sure that there were a lot of people who kind of shook it off and said, no, we can do this ourselves. So it's that long-term journey and sticking it out. I'm sure that there's been a lot in the last 16 years that could have derailed you. Last but not least, Gaylin.
Yeah, I wish I had a fancier story to how I came about.
Make it up, Gaylin. Nobody will know.
All right, once upon a time. I actually had been living in the UK for a long time, almost 14 years, and I had never planned to move there permanently, and I decided I was going to come back to South Africa in 2010. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I had been managing big projects as a program and a project manager in the UK. We were doing big programs of research into human performance, sustainable performance, and then the financial crisis hit. So it was quite an interesting time. And what we found through some of our research, and I work for a big company, what we found is that organizations who'd gone into the financial crisis with certain rules in place about how people, how they would protect and nurture their people over the financial crisis. Those organizations coming out of the financial crisis were really set up to pick up early opportunities from the market, and actually they grew to greater strength than they'd ever been before. And I just thought I know we talk the people piece all the time, but there's something missing. And we've got to get stronger at it, because we need to change our workplaces so that they are better places to work, and so that businesses can do well and do good in society. And I kind of had those ideas floating around in my head, and I wondered who would employ me with that kind of thinking. And funny enough, I just started to land some opportunities, some projects, and over the years, the business has just grown, developed into that kind of a niche, more conscious business practices, the purpose element, which is why Mankwe and I have had these fantastic conversations around how important purpose is for an organization. And now that COVID has hit, we see the same kind of thing happening again. The companies that are investing in their people and paying more than just lip service and also have a strong purpose orientation seem to be doing better than some others. They're generating solutions that perhaps wouldn't be easy to find in these tougher times. So my kind of business is falling together, and I keep being in the right place at the right time. And I find that being external to the organization allows me to kind of provoke with new thinking and new tools and new ideas and concepts, and you have a different license to do that, I think, if you're external. So it's kind of all just fallen into place, and that's how it continues to go. Things fall into place and you believe that they will, and they do. So I feel quite grateful for that.
I think that has a lot to do with the fact that your purpose is so aligned to your values, excuse me, and to seeking and to work with organizations that are similar. And absolutely agree, those are the organizations that will last. So just in terms of something that I'm sure everybody really wants to know, and this is something we're just going to open to the 5 of you and just chat freely, is the dreaded F word, and not my favorite F word, the other F word, which is failure. You know, all of you, no matter how long or short you've been doing this, I would imagine you've encountered failure. And, you know, a lot of us have been socially conditioned and raised. We don't talk about a failure. Failure is a terrible thing. It's shameful and that type of thing. But the fact of the matter is failure is significant to our pathways and our journeys and our success. So just, you know, off the top of your head and freely, what are your thoughts on failure and any personal experience or examples that you want to give? Whoever wants to go first, go right ahead.
Yeah, I can go. I think for me, Brand Code is my second business. 10 years ago, when I was much younger and perhaps more naive, I launched into the business world and I was tired of corporate. I'm like, that's it. I know how to do this. I can do this myself. And off I went. And it took less than a year for me to realize that it's not an easy space to be in. And there's an emotional level of intelligence that's required to be an entrepreneur. And if I had realized that sooner, that things won't just happen, you know, you've got to go out there and be intentional about the energy that you put out there. You've got to be intentional about meeting new people. You've got to be intentional about looking for that new business. For some reason, I thought by virtue of the people I knew, business would come because I'm so great.
You are so great, Mankwe.
Life doesn't quite work that way. So it was quite a knock on my own personal confidence when people didn't buy into what I was putting out there. And I also realized that there's a timing thing as well. You know, sometimes what you've got to give to the world is not yet time for what you have. And I also realized that. And I also realized that there was a lot for me to still learn as well, you know. And the more I gave myself time to go back into corporate, to practice my craft, the more confident I grew in what I was doing, and the more open I was to also learning from other people and expanding my own knowledge and my own capabilities. And I think the second time around, when I decided, okay, now I'm ready, I was a lot more confident in my own abilities, confident in who I was as an individual. And I think that plays a huge part in terms of future success. It's just that confidence in not only yourself, but in your abilities, and being comfortable with rejection or people not buying into what you're saying. I think when I was younger, I would be scarred, completely devastated. Now I can take rejection on the chin. I've understood that not everyone's going to buy into everything that I'm saying or that I'm selling, and it's okay. It's business. It's not always personal.
That is just absolutely wonderful and so true, because I think, and certainly as women, even more so, we take these things so personally and then get knocked to the ground, whereas the attitude that you've developed and that you are very proudly displaying now of that confidence, and it's not you. I think that's amazing. Awesome. Who else wants to share?
I'll share. I'm happy to share. So what a lot of people don't realize is that I suffer from quite chronic imposter syndrome. And Gaylin and I have actually discussed this a couple of times. And I think what we need to remember, and, touching on what Mankwe said, and she probably said it more eloquently than what I'm going to say, is that you've got to have the confidence in yourself, because no one else is going to pick you up when the shit hits the fan or when things go wrong. So for me, yes, I presented a lot of international conferences. The last international conference I spoke at, I just was told that I was rated the second top speaker at the conference out of 55 people. And I still have this fear inside of me that I'm going to fail. And, I present a lot, almost on behalf of South Africa, because I talk about diversity and inclusion. And I stand up there, and literally I stand at my standing desk to present, and my knees are knocking together, and I literally get the proper sweat on in the Joburg winter. And I think that what we've got to do is that we've got to have more faith in our abilities, because you only get that from yourself. You don't have a team to keep you buoyed up and boistered and say, well done. You don't win the top salesperson or the best recruiter of the month award. You've really got to keep yourself in that positive mind frame, which is quite difficult, and almost have, faith in your abilities. And I think also another way is that it's not actually, I know how you posed the question and you're talking about failure, but it's about avoiding failure. So you don't want to fail. So as a small business owner, I found that staying agile, staying lean, and being able to offer a whole lot of different things to the market. For example, in the times of the pandemic, when Europe locked down their borders, within 24 hours, I lost 3 international clients that I was sourcing candidates for, through Africa and in Australia. And if I hadn't have quickly been able to pivot and be agile and say, okay, cool, what else can I offer the market locally? Because international business at this time is going to be hard, is you can do that to avoid the failure. And I think that it's all about, for us, we all have that really strong survival instinct. I can see it, I can smell it on these other panelists, that you do what you can before failure hits. And I think that that's also really important.
Hugely so, Van, and I love the agile, this is a women in technology event, so everybody knows exactly what agile is about. But it's very true, because if you are going to fail, you want to fail fast. Don't drag it out, don't gently peel the plaster off,
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay, who else wants to comment on failure?
I'll jump in now, Lauren. So my failure story is another F, and it's slightly ironic that I'm going to talk about finances, considering the nature of my business. But I think this is actually quite common in terms of, what they always say about like the cobbler's children not wearing shoes. And I think the key thing about entrepreneurs is that often what happens is you have a passion or a skill or something that it is that you do and you love to do. And that is always much easier to focus your energy and attention on, the stuff that you're good at, rather than the stuff that is maybe a little boring or you have less confidence in or whatever. And so you combine this strength here with the ability to do like a back of a cigarette box calculation, because you know what's in the bank account, and you know what you need in order to pay salaries this month and maybe next month. But what I'm talking about as perhaps one of our biggest failures was not looking closely at the finances, on a regular basis, and actually deeply looking at them, understanding them, tracking trends, understanding what these different graphs and ratios mean. And so, you know, for me, if I can offer some advice from that failure, is you have to prioritize something that is going to trip you up prior to anything else is going to be cash flow or a lack thereof. So it has to be a focus, even if it's not your strength. And you know, what we did that solved the problem for us is we got an outsourced CFO. We use a company called Creative CFO for what it's worth, where you can buy hours of a specialist's time. And once we did that, we also automated meetings. And it sounds so simple, but once you remove the choice, like somebody who you're paying is going to be at a meeting at this time to discuss your finances, well, then that's what you're going to do. And so it's not a difficult problem to solve, but I think the thing is actually, for most entrepreneurs, like the switch has to happen here first. That just as much as my passion or my skill or the thing that I love to do or sell is important, the finances need to sit at an equal level, because without this is going to fail.
I think that's such brilliant advice, and it just speaks to the point you guys are all answering solutions for other companies, and very often we don't look at ourselves and answer the solution that we need. And in particular, if you're not a finance specialist, then you definitely need a finance specialist to help you, you know.
There's a point there that I didn't make, but we see it all the time, is that entrepreneurs also have this very interchangeable situation between the business bank account and the personal bank account. And so when we roll out our financial education with SME owners or any kind of business owners for that matter, it's a common thing where we first have to say, right, we're here to talk about your personal finances and get those in order. But for starters, how many of you happen to share funds between the accounts when you may be a little short? And, you know, you get all these like sheepish looks from everyone in the room. And it's a real thing, because that's what entrepreneurs tend to do. It's definitely something to be mindful of.
100%, 100%. And in fact, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are nodding, even if they aren't entrepreneurs.
Laura, I just want to chime in something there with regards to finances. Now, I'm further from being a numbers person than probably anybody else on this call. It's just really not my thing. But what I want to say is that one of the biggest lessons that I learned after failing dismally was sort out your tax and make sure that when you start your business, you're in the right tax bracket. Because my first tax bill, I actually nearly had a little puke on my shoes. So just make sure that you've got that sorted. That is my best advice. Get the best financial advice for your business, because I didn't when I started.
Yeah, very, very good point. Who haven't we spoken to? Gaylin, what about your input on failure?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting conversation. Rapid fire, rapid fail. It's your best learning time. But if I think about literally failing at anything that I do now, so if I'm running a virtual leadership development session and I fail at that, I mean, the thought is horrifying. So it's quite difficult to integrate that concept of failing so that you can learn with actually delivering good business. Because if I deliver a terrible session, they're just not going to recommend me, or they're not going to call me back, and that's going to be the end of an opportunity. So I think to look at it from an entrepreneur's view in that sense, it's something about, rather than failing, it's something about the mistakes that you make. Because I think, you know, we all do the best we can with what we know, with what we have in that particular situation. And you look back on your life and you say, oh, if I'd known that guy was such a jerk, I never would have dated him when I was 20 or whatever. But of course you didn't know that, so that's why you did, and that's why it all turned out like that. But you kind of do the best that you can with what you have at the time. And then the opportunity is to think back and think, you know, what do I learn through that? And also, what are the kind of mistakes that I keep making? Why do I keep end up, something doesn't go as I planned it to, but it keeps happening. And what is the thread in that that's trying to teach me something that I'm not learning? And I think that concept of failing to learn over time when you end up in those same situations is really powerful. Some people call it a kind of a radical responsibility. So they look at things that didn't go to plan and say, what did we learn from that? And why is our business better because we've gone through that learning process? And if we keep ending up in the same position with these small learnings or these small mistakes, how does it make our business stronger? So when you look at things in terms of a mini failures point of view, and you actually put some time aside to think about that and you get some feedback on it, I think it makes your business immeasurably stronger. But just big failures. I mean, I haven't had any huge. I once delivered some training for a company in Cape Town, and it just went horrifically wrong. I mean, it was just terrible. And I flew back on the plane, and I think I had a few glasses of wine, and it's just an awful experience because the candidates hated it, they complained about it, and it just all went wrong. But, you know, now if I was handling that, I would have stopped halfway through, reassessed the situation, like asked for some help. You know, there's so many different things that I would have done, but unless you can sit down and think about what you would do in that situation again, you're not learning that. So luckily that hasn't happened again. So many failures, I think, and learning over time and ending up in the same place. Getting feedback, yeah, and also asking for help. You know, in the early days, I thought I had to do everything myself and I had to know everything and I had to be perfect. And then you think, geez, we're all just fumbling around sometimes. And often now I'll just say, I don't actually know I can't understand what the client wants, or I'm lost with this, and I'll phone up someone and say, help out, what do you think? And then we'll chat through it, and it's like, oh, I haven't seen it that way, and that helps, and I can move forward. So yeah, just having a network of people you can get on the phone to and say, I don't know what the F is going on, can you help? And they're like, yeah, sure. How about seeing it this? And you're like, geez, why didn't I see it like that? So that's helpful. Yeah.
It's very cool. Okay, Caro, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just sort of going on what Gaylin said there, you know, I think, and Mankwe as well, when you do have a failure, to try and not take it personally. I've also been fortunate to not have any major failures, but, you know, you'll have a client where you're certain you've hit the brief and you're good to go, and they come back and they hate the work that you've done. And rather than take it personally, be big enough to say, right, what don't you like and how can I fix it? And coupled with what Gaylin was saying, make sure that you've got a great support network around you that you're actually prepared to listen to. So find the right people to put into that network, people that you can trust, that have got your best interests and your business best interests at heart, and you have to listen. And sometimes it's stuff that you don't want to hear, but you've got to listen, because we're not always right. We don't always hit the mark. We're not perfect. And very often the client wants something that they don't even realize what they want until they've seen it. So yeah, just using everything as a learning opportunity. Make yourself better for the next time. You know, make sure that that's a mistake that you perhaps don't make next time, and just use the mistake to communicate. Get input from others and communicate with your client.
So you guys have actually collectively all answered my next question, which is, what advice would you give people considering starting their own business? So I think everybody on the call can agree that the very first thing is to make sure you've got somebody from a financial perspective helping you, or guiding you, or consulting for you. The second thing would be to kind of get a thick skin. And if you don't have a thick skin, then I would take a little bit of time off to get a thick skin, because you can't take anybody else's response to your work and your business and your purpose personally. So if it's not their cup of tea, or if you haven't quite met their expectations, you know, it's not a personal thing. And the third thing would be to surround yourself, or to ensure that you have a significant support base. I really love that, because that's where you ask for help. Putting your hand up and asking for help is just really, really important. But is there anything else over those three things that you all collectively spoke about that you would recommend or that you would suggest for somebody considering starting their own business? What is like the one thing that you would say, oh, you should definitely do that?
I'm happy to go with this, Law, because it's actually just quite plain and simple. I was working in a company that I had a very good relationship with the management team. I'd been there for almost 10 years. And I actually approached them, and I think that they knew that I was starting to get itchy feet and get like, you know, this is maybe not what I'm going to do for the rest of time. And I actually approached them and I said, look, I need to free up some time. I've got a business idea, but I need to see and assess what the demand is out there. And I actually went on to a 4-day work week with them. So it freed up one day where I could work on my other, at that point, it was still a side hustle, you know, assess to see how many people would be interested in this. And I could actually start training companies on those days. And that really was helpful, because obviously I did take a knock on my salary, but I had the security of still having a salary while I was getting the business up and running. And I think if you've got a good enough relationship with your boss or the business, that's a great way to start. And
also to do your homework. So it's all great saying, I love baking on Sundays. This sounds amazing. I'm going to do a cake business, quit my job on Friday, and then discover that I only actually like baking like one cake for my family. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Do your homework. Anybody else have any, like, what is your one thing?
Law, I'm going to jump in here. I think Vanessa touched on it earlier, saying she had a look around and saw that no one was offering her service within South Africa, and saw that opportunity. And I think it's critical to find a unique selling point, what your unique selling point is, and focus on that, and use that to get started, and just make sure that you don't get distracted from that, because in those first few months it feels tough, because you're scrambling for business, you're looking for opportunities, you're trying desperately to keep your bank balance in the green, and you do just about anything for a client. But if you can just focus on what it is that you can offer and the value that you can add, and don't compromise on that, you'll find that piece by piece things will fit into place, and you won't be spreading yourself thinly, and therefore potentially giving someone not quite the service, or not quite the conference, or not quite the talk that they were looking for. And by maintaining that focus, you can really make sure that you hit your mark, and make yourself known in that space.
Yes, I think that you are speaking there to authenticity, and I think Janice has jumped quite on there with her comments saying your brand is key at all times. So your authenticity and your integrity that is matched to the service you're providing becomes even more critical than the thing that you're actually providing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Who else wants to add to that?
So Lauren, I'll jump in now. So I know from looking at the panel that I'm with, I'm not sure how many of my fellow panelists have business partners. Am I the only one with a business partner? Am I? Okay. So that would be my piece of advice, is if you can start a business with somebody, do. And the reason I say that is because I'm pretty sure our business wouldn't be where it is today, or even around. In fact, if I didn't have a business partner, there is something to be said for having somebody where you have different strengths and you both bring that into play. It really can be a powerful combination if you get it right. My caveat to that is make sure the person you go into business with doesn't have independent income, i.e. you want somebody who needs money like you do. So just bear that in mind. I've seen that unravel one or two close businesses that I'm close to, where one partner didn't have the same financial requirements from the business as someone else. And then failing that, or in addition to that, if you don't have a business partner, get yourself a business coach. The difference that getting a business coach made to our business, and that was both our partnership as co-owners of the business and to the business itself, has been, I mean, if I wish I could actually think of the increase in revenue or profit in percentage terms for you, but the difference was remarkable. And so for me, I would say, you know, chat to other people you know who have successful businesses. That's, by the way, how we found ourselves a good business coach, because they're a dime a dozen at the moment. You also want somebody who's good at what they do and who's also good for the stage you're at. So there's different people who would be helpful if you're early stage. There are different people who would be helpful if you in the process of scaling or growing your business. There are business coaches that specialize in helping you survive a downturn, for instance. So speak to other business owners, particularly ones that you have seen have a sudden rise in their trajectory in terms of being successful. Find out if they've got a coach and interview one or two before you settle on one who you feel like you can have a good working relationship with.
That's fantastic advice, Hayley, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they are loath to spend on a cost, what they might perceive as a cost, you know. So to listen to you and to understand the value and the explicit value in terms of the impact on your bottom line and the impact around your relationship with your partner or investor or coach is significant to the success of your business. That's fantastic. Is there anyone else who wants to add? Yes, Mankwe.
One thing that was valuable to me in the last 2 years, I only learned this in the last 2 years, is separating Brand Code as the institution and Mankwe as the employee. And it was such a critical moment for me realizing, because as an owner-manager syndrome, you know, you become the manager, you're the doer, and you're the organization. Separating those two emotional state of being was critical for me, because I quickly had to realize that I have to think about the sustainability of the organization. I have to think about pulling people into the organization, as Hayley is speaking about. But I also had to realize that I can't be Mankwe the employee wanting brand codes to grow. You know, there's two separate states of mind that you have, two hats that you almost have to wear, and different skill sets that you need for both. Because one is quite an emotional employee who wants, and who's impatient, who wants things to happen immediately. But the company has a different trajectory and requires a different headspace, especially if you want to create a legacy and you want to build a long-term business. And institutionalizing it was key to me, creating processes, getting a bookkeeper, getting a finance person, putting HR elements in place, having processes, having a standard way of doing things, you know, putting my methodologies into place, understanding that packaging what I'm selling, understanding what the story is that Brand Code takes to clients. And once I packaged all of that, once I put all those pockets, business pockets together, it just made life so much easier for me. And I would just say to people that separate yourself. You know, it's easy to become so intertwined in the business that you do everything.
Yes.
And emotionally, you get lost, because when you lose a business or when things don't go your way, you suddenly are so emotional about it and why am I doing this? Maybe I should stop. But that's you, the employee, speaking. The organization doesn't speak like that. You know, the organization assesses itself and says, okay, how do we pivot? You know, what did we do wrong? Where did we go wrong? What can we do? What else can we offer? What did we not understand? And for me, it's a conversation between two headspaces constantly. And I think clarifying those for yourselves, I mean, it's helped me, and I hope it helps somebody else out there.
I love that, around just also treating yourself at some point you are your employee. And, you know, that is, you know, as an employee, you want a salary, you want benefits you want, there's those things to take into consideration. Karika, you've got your hand up. Do you have a question for us?
Just 2 comments from Janice. The first one is great question, but I would say based on what Caroline has taught me is brand. Your brand is key at all times, and networking in South Africa is also very important. And people want you to care because what you are selling is what they need. And it's, I think, to, just to add value, to other people. It's basically the first comment there. And then the second comment from Janice was, I'd say, Hayley, go into business with someone with the same work ethic as you. There's always an issue if one business partner works harder than the other. Friends don't necessarily work, but yes, different strengths is key.
That's fantastic. Thanks. Okay, so you guys have actually answered a lot of our questions, which is great. But one of the things that I'm going to tag on to what we've been talking about now is, with all of the things that you've spoken about, and Gaylin, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind, just because we have worked together and we've had the conversation about rates and that. And the black and white question, the hard fact question is, how do you value your services? How do you value yourself so that you are, one, charging yourself out, your services correctly? And by correctly, I mean fairly, but fairly to yourself as well as to the industry, So you are an employee, and you have this is your life, this is your business. So how do you value your services so that you are charging correctly?
Yeah, it's something, I think it is quite a hard process to go through, I think, because when you value your services and you feel like you are undercharging over time, that makes you a bit resentful and you don't get the best out of the relationship. Equally, if you go in a bit too high, and you kind of get a sense of this over time, or maybe some people don't feel it, but you kind of wake up in the morning and think, geez, am I really delivering enough value for this? Or I've charged a really big rate for that, and now I have to sing and dance all day, and what if I don't meet their expectations? So you're kind of looking for that middle ground. In our business, we use a sliding scale. So if you're a small business or an individual, the price is different to if it's a big organization, even though you're delivering the same service. I think you feel your way through it as time goes on. And there was something else I wanted to say that slipped my mind. Yeah, you've got to kind of get that balance right between not charging your worth versus overcharging and feeling like you are burning yourself out to deliver at a level that you find stressful. Yeah, so, and also, COVID has also changed things. So with the digital world, some of what you would have charged has changed. The modeling is charged. You're not traveling out to your client. You might be spending less time. You can't spend a whole day with someone digitally or with a group. So it forces you to reconsider what pricing models apply. And that, again, is just kind of suck it and see, and conversations with clients as well. But I do find that a little bit of give goes a long way as well with your clients, because everybody's in a tougher situation than perhaps before. So it's a hard one to answer, actually.
I think it is a hard one because you touched on something there. Essentially you are valuing yourself and then putting it out there, and the market then kind of gives you the thumbs up or thumbs down, and the only way that you know that is after the fact or during, So Van, I did notice you nodding quite a bit there. So perhaps as somebody who's joined the entrepreneur game relatively recently, how does this impact you? And absolutely, I'm sure that COVID has impacted, to Gaylin's point, but how did you value yourself?
With incredible difficulty, Law, to be honest with you, because when you're the only one who's offering this service in the country, what do you charge for it?
Yes.
And that was my biggest stumbling block. So I spoke to other trainers. I looked at what companies were charging. I tried to get some middle ground. I went with that. But I actually only recently, and I suppose this is one of the things about being a new business owner, in the last, say, 6 weeks, realized the value of my training. And by that, I had a big corporate who, I can't name names, but was definitely not a corporate that is struggling during the times of a global medical pandemic. And they tried to get me to crowbar 2 days of training into 1 day. So that's 16 hours into potentially 8 hours online. Law, you've done my training. You know that would be a complete and utter information overload. I would lose people in the first quarter of an hour. And I wasn't prepared to do it because I knew that the poor people sitting in the room, it wouldn't be fair to them. I would crush them. It wasn't right. And also then I felt a massive loyalty to my other clients who have paid what they have paid and given me for 2 days worth of training. And I actually walked away from the business because for me, it wasn't actually fair and it didn't feel right. And that was when I first of all realized is that you have to get your values in the way of what you're charging for the training that I do. And it's actually better to walk away than to be forced into providing a substandard service.
Because you're going to be chained to that. I think that's such a valuable point, because if you had stuck with it, it creates an expectation, and that's the bar you've set, and you're going to spend the next 2, 3, 4 years scrambling to get to your true and appropriate value. So as tough as it sounds that you walked away, in the long game, that is the right decision. But Mankwe, I can see you also nodding. So how do you? When we talk about value, and women on this call, we've had a number of WIT events where we've spoken about our personal value and our self-value and our self-esteem. I'm very certain that the other gender, I don't want to name names and sink people, but I can tell you that the other gender does not have this problem.
No.
They do not have this problem of going, oh, flip, should I be charging 200 Rand an hour or 600 Rand an hour? They'll come in guns blazing going, it's 800 Rand an hour, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And I think that, to see you nodding, I think you're on that same page.
100%. I think men don't have a problem with over-promising and under-delivering. We on the other hand, do the exact opposite in terms of valuing ourselves. And it was an initial struggle for me, but I had to also understand what is the marketing and communication space benchmarking itself at. What are the top agencies that I aspire my organizations to get to? What is their level? And also valuing what I know I put in terms of every single brand development strategy that we put together, every creative output that we put together. You really have to understand what is it that you put in and look at what the market is saying and find your own happy space within that thinking. And I say happy space deliberately because you don't want to be resentful when you're putting out a service and sending out invoices and feeling like you're putting in too much work and you're not getting the value back. So you have to define what that happy medium space is within that valuing process. One thing that we also did was tier our pricing model as well. We realized that there are things that are run-of-the-mill jobs. We realized that there are middle jobs, and then there are high-end jobs. So what we started doing is we named our baseline work quick and dirty, and you go in, you come out the other side, and get a price point for that. And then we've got make it better. So you really don't want to overhaul, but you want to improve things. And then we've got to make it better rate, and we've got a reinvent rate where you're saying, okay, we want a complete redevelopment of our identity. We want to reposition ourselves. We want a go-to-market strategy. We want to do this and this and that. And our thinking is modeled then based on what the client wants. Because you don't always want to go into a space and want to force someone to do a complete overhaul when they actually don't need to. Sometimes you just need to improve something. So we realized that aligning our costing model to what the client needs were helped a great deal in terms of coming up with a value proposition from a pricing perspective.
I think your tiering also answers another question that I had, which was, how do you approach different clients? Because some of your clients do have all the money in the bank, and some of them are, also starting out themselves, and they don't have that big budget, but they do need a leg up. So I love your names, Quick and Dirty. It kind of explains exactly what you're going to be doing. But I think that's also very important when we consider pricing, is how can I also tailor make, giving yourself some leeway to tailor make your solution to that individual client, to that individual, because what could potentially now be a Quick and Dirty becomes a reinvent, that long journey, and you've priced yourself accordingly, and one day they will be big and successful enough to pay you the big bucks. So I think nurturing that partnership is, but then just going to something Hayley said earlier around finances. As entrepreneurs, what is your startup capital? This is a question that I didn't have in my list, so I know that you haven't prepared for it, but it's kind of leading that way. Where do you go for finance? Where did you go to get the means to start your own business so that you can do these things, as opposed to accepting every job, accepting every client, saying yes to everything because out of sheer desperation you just want to get your foot on the ladder? So Hayley, probably let's start with you in terms of being the money lady, but what is your advice with regards to startup capital and to reinvesting returns and that type of thing?
So, Lauren, I'm very risk averse when it comes to money. And so the way we built our business was we bootstrapped it ourselves. Not quite as cleverly as Vanessa did, because I had been, booted out whilst pregnant and stuff. So, it was a little bit stressful. But I think my advice in this field would be test your market, know what you're selling, and have at least 3 clients who've bought whatever it is that you're selling to them before you even think about getting external funding. But for me, the initial play, unless you've got a very, very capital intensive business, and that's a different kind of discussion, is that you have to have your personal money on the line whilst you prove your model, your product, your service. And then you've got to be able to sell it at least 3 times to at least 3 different completely independent clients, so that you have confidence that your model and your offering and everything works before you start risking other people's money.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Gaylin, what about you? What is your input on this side of things?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, Hayley, because if you look at the work of Adam Grant, he wrote a book called Originals. He actually combed through a whole lot of research which shows that some of the most successful entrepreneurs are actually very risk averse. So they don't take, it seems as though one day they woke up in the shower, they decided to make electric cars, and then, just tried out a few ideas and then got rich and lived happily ever after. But that's actually very rarely the case. So they usually take very considered risks. Yeah, so I think if you're in a professional services-based business, often you can bootstrap your own company, but there are other companies that would require capital. The sort of owing other people money horrifies me. Maybe it's my imposter phenomenon coming in here. I take the bullet when the business is going through tough times, and then I enjoy the rewards when it isn't, I guess. So I haven't looked to any investors. I guess not that kind of business. what I do is when we are doing better, I try to funnel that back into initiatives, other stuff, other initiatives that are trying to make the world a better place. So I think that's kind of just a calmer orientation.
Caro, from a long-term perspective, as we said, you've stuck this out for a long time. From your perspective, in terms of creating value, pricing yourself and retaining that value and earning that value, what is your opinion or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it is definitely one of the toughest things to get right as an entrepreneur. I think I'm extremely guilty of it, and 16 years down the line I still haven't got it right. I think we're very guilty of undervaluing what it is we do in other people's businesses. I think the fine balance is between looking around, like Mankwe said, looking around and seeing what it is that your competition are offering and charging, and trying to position yourself there, but also making sure that you don't devalue what it is that you are offering because you're desperate for the work. So if you go in at a certain level, you're going to get the work. The problem with that is that it's the difference between buying, with respect to anyone brand related, like a pair of Soviet shoes versus a pair of Converse shoes. The client's going to look at it and say, I don't have to pay so much here, and they don't see the value in the time and the effort that you've put into the project. In terms of financing, yeah, like I said, 16 years ago, there was not much startup capital in my eyes, and in my back pocket. But yeah, I just struggled my way through it. It comes and goes. When there is money and when there is opportunity to spend, to grow, take that opportunity, or like Hayley said, have some guarantee in your offering by having tested it out on the market, and use that to bump yourself up to the next level. And I think there's so much chance there's things go well, things go badly. We have a pandemic. For some of us, it's fantastic because we're so busy, it's ridiculous. And for others, people are closing down their businesses. So I think you've got to be agile. You've got to be ready. Make sure there's reserve, or there's the ability to draw from some kind of resource, and go with it.
Sorry, somebody's just come back from their little cycling and ice cream adventure, so excuse the noise in the background. Just something that you just said, Caro, which is really valuable, and I'm sure everyone on the call, I know that we're reaching near the end of this. I've got one more question for everyone. Just in terms of sticking it out. So there's a technical component to entrepreneurs that we have not covered, and that is the startup capital, the investment, the costs, the overheads, and that's a completely separate panel. We'd have to give you another 2 hours, I'm sure. But just in terms of sticking it out, the tough question would be, when would you pull the plug? If and when would you pull the plug? How far would this go? And that is part of the technical discussion. So it's definitely not something we're going to consider today. But I think the reality is also, what is your benchmark in the financial health and success of your business? So do you are you measuring yourself in terms of growth? So you've got a goal that you want to reach a certain size. Physically have 10 employees, have 100 employees, or a size and turnover, you want to turn over 10 million rand or whatever it is, or what is your goal in terms of, is it an impact goal that you want to be have 100 clients and have at least 10% of your clients are listed companies or what have you. So in terms of your business investment, your reinvestment into yourself and your growth, like how are you sticking this out, and then what are your growth plans? So where do you see yourself going with this? Everybody's nodding, so I'll call the name. Van, you're at the bottom right, so you're gonna go.
Damn that bottom right. No, actually, what I want to say is, first of all, thanks for skipping me on all the financial, capital, bootstrap, all of those questions, because I don't know any of that shit. So awesome, thank you. Luckily, the one thing that I will say around finances is I just want to add this in advice to anyone looking to start their own business. Get as lean as possible before you start. I mean, I was in a fortunate position. I had been earning a good salary. I had managed to pay off cars. I'd moved from like private banking to just regular banking. You know, all of those little things that took the pressure off when you decide that you're going to take that leap of faith. And let's look at goals. What do you want to achieve? This is probably where I need a business coach, in all honesty here, because I don't have goals like that. You know, what I want to be doing, and obviously things haven't been as lucrative during the time of the pandemic, but the fact that I'm still training, I'm still working, I still have clients approaching me, I take it as that my business is a success, you know. The fact that I'm still covering my bills, I'm managing to put into a savings account, that for me is a success. Personally, I'm the world's worst manager. I hate managing people. I vacillate between wanting to be everyone's best friend or the Labrador, and then I get pissed off when people don't work weekends like I do. So I battle with management. So no, I don't want to grow this company into an empire. I really don't. I don't want to even have 100 clients. I don't even have a figure in total of what I want to earn, because every time I look in the bank and I see that I'm in the green, I'm in this positive, I'm stoked. So for me, it really is just about keeping head above water, being successful, and changing lives, and, you know, impacting the people that I'm training in order to do a better job, and realize that recruitment is not just shoving a bum in a seat. It's changing someone's life and making a difference. And that for me is enough. And the fact that it's turned out to be lucrative, and I've managed to have even more financial success in starting my own business is wonderful. So yeah, that's all the pressure I'm putting on myself right now.
That's a significant goal. So that's fantastic. Mankwe, what about you?
As you're speaking, Vanessa, I'm like nodding because I'm in total agreement. I have no ambitions of creating an empire of any sort. Part of the reason I started Brand Code was to have freedom of expression and flexibility. And I don't think you get that with that kind of growth ambition, I think. And also, I have such a close collaborative relationships with a lot of my clients that they take so much out of me. And I can't imagine, and often, and I suppose that's the danger of small businesses as well, is that CEOs or whoever your clients are become so close to the work that you do, and then only want you, if that makes sense. So you develop a very close relationship with your clients to an extent that it's difficult to clone yourself into multiple me's. So I've actually come to the realization that I'm comfortable with my business being small. It gives me the flexibility to do what I want. And it's also nimble enough for me to really have authentic input. I think when my work starts being work, then I'll really have a problem with it. I love what I do, and the moment it stops being magical, then I'll know that I've grown too big. And that's for me is where I'm at with it. I don't want it to be an empire, but I just wanted to create impact. And the little team that I have, I'm happy with it. And our growth ambition is that we are constantly growing, and that's fine. As long as we
Mankwe, because I think a lot of time people who want to start their own businesses are put off because they think that they have to compete or become, you know, a massive conglomerate. You know, they want to be, they get convinced or kind of under the impression that that's a form of success. So it's wonderful to hear that purpose is just as significant, you know, and knowing what you want, knowing that you want a small business and that's where you want to be is equally important. Caro, what about you? I know that you've also been a one-man band for your 16 years. Would you ever change that?
Yeah, I find it so interesting that Vanessa, who's you call her the toddler of the group in terms of her business's age, I could have answered exactly the same to the question. The 16 years down the line, like Mankwe, I'm no interest in getting any bigger than what I am. I know that I make a difference in the clients' businesses that I get into, and that's enough for me. I'm very fortunate that first of all it's a passion for me, and then it's work. And I, like Vanessa, when I look at the bank account at the end of the month, if it's looking positive, bonus, and we carry on. And really, it's more about working with guys who, particularly for me at the beginning of lockdown, working with guys who are struggling. They need to suddenly change the way they do things. They need to become relevant in a very difficult environment, and sort of grabbing them by their bootstraps and pulling them through that mud and getting to the other side and seeing them now 3-4 months down the line, their business is not only surviving but actually starting to thrive, and that's enough. If there's money in the bank, excellent. If there's more clients coming, even better. But really, that's what gets me up.
That's awesome. Hayley, I'm going to jump to you here because I know that I have worked with Worth, and I know that your guys' business model is a little bit different in terms of that. So what is your goal as a business?
So, yeah, I think if we start at the purpose where, you know, most of my panelists have left off, I am very passionate in terms of the same thing. We like to believe that we change a lot of lives through financial education. A lot of people spend their whole lives figuring out how to get a job and earn money, but then once they get it, they don't know what to do with it. And so that's, you know, what we believe we change with our financial education. Now, for us, the more lives we can change, the more impact we believe we'll have. So, for example, we have I've actually got my purpose and vision and all of that sitting next to me here on my desk, so that's why I'm glancing over it. But our big, hairy, audacious goal is to change 2 million lives, or to have people completed 2 million of our financial education courses by February 2029. And our first stepping stone to that is 39,000 lives changed by next February. Now, for us, that means that we have to grow and we have to scale. But I think what's really critical here is that it's not growth for the sake of, it's a means to an end. And we believe that we have the ability to grow this business in such a way that we don't necessarily need a lot of people to reach those objectives. We just need a few more than we have. But I think there's an important lesson that I've learned along the way, and I think that's the thing I really would like to focus on sharing today. And that is, for me, I want to actually work myself out of a job. I want to make sure, sorry, I can hear children now knocking them. Oh, okay, rescued by dad. So for me, I want to work myself out of a job. And I say that because what tends to happen as you grow your business is that the business becomes more and more reliant on you. And so I am now in the process of actively trying to see what I can pull myself away from, how I can hire people who are smarter, faster, and better at me than doing the things that I like to believe I'm the only one who can do, but I actually, I know that I'm not. And so what that would free up for me personally is it gives me choices. And so if I choose to come back and spend however many hours a day creating a new course because I'm passionate about that, then that's excellent. But if I choose to spend a week on the side of the hockey field watching my kids play sport, then that's also okay. And so for me, the idea of getting my business to the point where it is not dependent on me and me alone, or my business partner and him alone, for almost all of the functions is critical. And if anyone is interested in understanding that more or learning more about what I'm referring to here, there's an incredible book by Pavlo Phitidis called Sweat Scale Cell that just describes it infinitely more articulately than I'm doing now. He's got an incredible way of weaving entrepreneurship stories with practical advice to build systems and processes. Mankwe referred to it earlier. It's critical if you want to remain sane when you're running your own business, is you have to put in place systems and processes. And it sounds so boring. And for somebody like me who's very creative, like that kind of, even just saying those words like gives me highs. But now I've had this change of focus, and I've realized that if I embrace that, it's actually ultimately going to be more freeing for me. And that shift happened with my business coach and from reading that book. So please, if you want to do more, that's a great book to reference.
So that's fantastic, and I especially love the reference there to working yourself out of a job, because there is, as much as we all five of you are very passionate and you all have clearly demonstrated your purpose, nobody wants to be working 24/7 non-stop for the rest of their life as a hamster wheel. There has to be a point where you are living the life that you've created. And absolutely, for a lot of us on this call, we work in the jobs that we love. We've joined companies and taken on roles that we love. But there's still a balance that is required. Otherwise, your sanity will be questioned at some point. So if I just take a time check, we're running out of time, and I'm going to start wrapping us up now. And I think the last question that I want to tie this all together, and Gaylin, I'm going to start with you on this question, is, everything we've spoken about tonight, you guys have given amazing insight. I'm very grateful that we recorded this session. I think it's been hugely valuable. But I think probably one of the most insightful things that you can give everybody on the call is, how do you create balance in your life to ensure that you are not a workaholic? And I don't want, Vanessa, you just now, you said you work on weekends, and that's fine. I don't want to put impose a boundary on what is the definition of working too much or too long or too hard. But I think when we talk about being a workaholic and having a balance, we are talking about that all-absorbing state that entrepreneurs can get into, where everything becomes about the business and you lose sight of yourself, your business, your family, your social life, and things beyond the business. So just to wrap up, if you can each, starting with Gaylin, just give us all insight into how you create balance.
I'm on mute. I think there are always going to be times when you need to put in the hours if you have your own business, because when you leave, you switch the lights off, and when you arrive, you switch them on. And if there's a problem, there isn't another light switcher on or an offer. So I think that is part of it. There will be times when your business needs you. I think also some of the stuff, again, by Adam Grant, strangely enough, he wrote, he's got this theory called give and take. And I think the longer you are running your own business, the more you understand where to invest your time and what to say no to, and how to still help people, but help them, it's the 5-minute help. And I think, you can get involved in a lot of conversations and collaborations, looking at new possible synergies and products and offerings. And that can take up a lot of time. You need to kind of do a bit of that work so that you can constantly reinvent what you're offering, but you get better at knowing where to focus your time and what to not focus on, I think. And I don't know how to explain it other than you get a sense of that over time. I mean, over COVID, I've tried to give 20% of my time for free to people who need it. So businesses that are struggling, coaching to people who can't afford to pay for it. So I don't mean for clients new clients who potentially would pay for work. I mean for, I have some small business clients, and some of them have gone through really, really, really tough times, and I've continued to work for them as the business lines away, and that's for free. So I can't do that unless I'm managing my time well in other places. So I think in summary, I think you get better at saying yes and no to things. And if you have a strong purpose behind your business, there's more clarity around what's a yes and what's a no.
I love that. I really, really love that. Carol, what about you? How do you get and maintain balance?
I think you've got to be able to switch off. So turn your laptop off, put your cell phone down. If you've got kids, go out and play on the lawn with them, or just use you make some time for yourself to decompress. And actually, I find sometimes if I'm battling creativity wise or solution wise with the clients, that just that step away, maybe going for a run or just some me time, kind of brings some clarity, and you get out of that haze and that space that you're in, where you're just on that hamster wheel going and going and going, and you actually take a step back and can reassess the situation or reassess the project, and suddenly an idea, or you have a conversation with someone and suddenly an idea comes. And I think just taking that step back. And also, one thing we talked about business coaches and about financial help and things like that. Finding a team, like I've been able to over the years develop a team around me who actually, you don't need to do all of the work yourself. You delegate the work onto somebody else, and use that time to read the book that Hayley's talking about, or read an article, or watch a video, or just do something that is going to give an overall benefit to you and to the business, not specifically a micro job, fixing that code or something like that. And I think having that ability to let go and to let someone else do it, and I've experienced that in my business life as well as my personal life, that letting the other person do the job, they might not do it as perfectly as you would, but they're still going to get the job done, and they're going to do it well, and it's going to free up your time to either decompress or focus on something else, or whatever it might be, which ultimately is for the benefit of all.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And I think it's a skill. I can see everybody nodding. And I think it's a skill, and to accept that delegation is not a sign of weakness. Asking for help is not a failure. It's actually foundational to your success. So I think that's 100%. Hayley, what about you? How do you ensure balance?
Lauren, I don't know if it's just the ages of my kids, but I don't believe there is such a thing as balance. So I've come to the point where I think there are cycles. And so there are periods where you're going to work harder. There are periods where you're going to play harder. And I think particularly when you're a mom to two small children, I personally, I had some like really serious health issues after I had my second child, and it sucked the lifeblood out of me. And so I learned the hard way, the hardest way possible, that if you don't put yourself first, if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself, if you don't fill your own cup, you will be useless to everyone else. So for me personally, a non-negotiable is sleep. I do whatever it is that I need to in order to get a good night's sleep. And when I do that, I'm able to be a better version of myself, whether it is a business owner, a content creator, a storyteller, a mom, or a wife, or a friend. And so for me, I've just got better at accepting the cycles. I think if you find people in your work life and your personal life who you can dovetail with, who you can tango with, and do those cycles at different times, hang on to them and love them and reward them and praise them, because it takes a village to be an entrepreneur, just like it takes a village to be a mom. And then for me personally, I try, like when I'm working, then I work hard. When I rest hard. Same as what Caroline was saying, devices off. Then when you're with the kids, I try and make sure that then I'm the best mom I can be. Just as when I'm working, I'm going to be the best person I can be at work. And so for me, that's kind of where my life is currently. I don't necessarily see it as balance, but I've got a point where it's working for me.
Yeah, and I think it's more along the lines of having those boundaries. So it absolutely, I think that, people think of balance as being, the Lady Liberty standing with her hands equally out, and that's not at all. It is. It sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, but I think it's the boundaries. And if you can't switch off, if you keep your phone with you and you're playing with the kids, but you've got one eye on the screen, you're not present in either circumstance. So those boundaries are critical. Yeah. Mankwe, what about you?
Unmute. Balance is elusive, isn't it? I think for me, I've learned to create pockets of space, pockets of space to think, pockets of space to work, pockets of space to play. And I didn't know this initially. I would work and find myself working at 2, 3 a.m. and become grumpy the next day, or become useless the next day, and you're overthinking and rethinking and overthinking and thinking, and you just get caught in a cycle that just is never ending. And until I realized that, one, you just actually have to step away, and you think better and you have better solutions with a clear mind, and you need to give yourself that space for that clear mind. It doesn't just happen. And I just started rotating my time, where I know the first 3 days of the week are hardcore days. I make sure that the last 2 days of the week are less pressured, and I try and create meetings and space and working time around that first part of the week. And it sounds romantic, but it works more often than not if you're deliberate about it. And I've also got 2 small children. And last year was a harder year because my daughter was 2. This year, at least she's 3. So, it helps. But like you're saying, if you're not present, then it's an injustice to everyone around you. So if you're with the kids and you're present, then that hour where you're present is more effective than 4 hours of you checking your laptop while being with your children. So I've learned to be present in my pockets of space that I create. And like Hayley was saying, it's also a cycle. There's a cycle where you are dog busy and there's nothing you really can do. But where you do find those moments where there is space, then relish that space and that time, and don't feel guilty about it.
And I like your reference to planning. We can tend to clutter our lives with unnecessary meetings and engagements and commitments. But if you make a concerted effort to plan your week and to allot those spaces and times, I think it gives you also a little bit of peace that you don't have to do 1,000 things and tick every box. You've committed to certain things, and that's what you can do.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how if you give people an option and say, "Oh, I'm not available on Thursday or Friday. How's Monday?" The time becomes available.
Yes.
I mean, often you insert those times in your own calendar, and often if you give people the option to say, "Oh, Thursday is not a great day. How about Wednesday?" People shift, and often not everything is an emergency, so where it doesn't need to be an emergency, then I definitely give myself leeway. And this is a learned practice. I mean, I wasn't good at it. I think I started being better at it in the last year.
Okay, awesome. And last but not least, Van, what about you?
I think you should have let these ladies speak before me every time, because everything that they have said resonates with me, to be honest. I think that, what they've said is brilliant. Like Hayley said, sleep is dear to me. Nothing really. I am not, I'm in bed by 8 and I normally read for an hour and I'm asleep by 9, but then I'm normally up by 5. And, that's when my day starts. And that's something I hold precious. Just to, touch on what you say, I work weekends, but when you run your own business, you need to do a little bit every day, or else it becomes too much. And just something I want to highlight there is that I think when you work for yourself and you run your own business, it's different to working for someone else, because I enjoy what I do. I love learning. If I find something new about the sourcing world or something that I can add to my training or enhance my training, that makes me happy. And there's a big difference between, your learning, I think that all of us need to continue learning, and that's my learning time is on the weekend. And I think it's different. And I think just to finish off on this whole balance thing, I know that I don't have it right, but one thing that I do is I try to, and it's difficult, like last night I was on a call to the States, until 8, but I try and have a hard stop at roundabout Hoppers 4, because I suffer from severe ADHD. By the time Hoppers 4 arrives, my medication's worn off. I know that I'm pretty much as useful as a chocolate teapot sitting in front of my laptop. So I may as well walk away from my laptop, and then tomorrow's another day. And I think that for me is important. I'm not one of these late night owls. And one thing that I will say about balance is that you're never going to get your balance right. I'm sitting with one of my biggest issues at the moment is that I have 2 parents in hospital with COVID. They found they've turned a corner, things are looking better, but that has really thrown me for the last 2 weeks. And these are things that are out of our control. So I think trying to find this thing of perfect balance, it's like a utopia. You're never going to get it, because you never know what external forces are going to be thrown your way. And I just think that do what you can do with what you've got, and don't be so flipping hard on yourself about trying to create a perfect life for yourself.
Ladies, I can definitely, I've been receiving SMSs already from friends and of people that attended today, and you've seen the comments in the chat. This really has been fantastic. Tara, I can't believe it's 5 to 6 already, and I actually still have like 4 questions for you. So we know that there should be a part 2. We'll do a follow-up.
Yeah, Laura, let's do a follow-up, because I don't know about anyone else, but I'm bursting for the loo right now. This is a long time for one's bladder to hold
get a chance. I know my wine glass has been empty since 5. But really, ladies, all 5 of you, truly insightful. I think you've shared, you've been very vulnerable and shared some very personal and insightful information to this evening. And I think it's, if anything, it's open dialogue for people that are listening to you tonight and they had an inkling here and they're like, oh, what if this is something where they're going to go, you know what, I'm going to ask the questions and I'm going to engage with these ladies because this is my goal. So really, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For all the ladies on the call, I do have 2 things to say. Firstly, I'm going to ask Hayley to choose a number from 1 to 24.
5.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Chaluba, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Chaluba, you are the lucky winner of a free course with Hayley and her company on financial well-being. So please, will you do me a favor and drop me an email right now? And I'm going to send you the details and you can get in touch with Hayley and set that up. So that's a fantastic opportunity that Hayley shared to welcome Women's Month, starting on Saturday is Women's Month. And as she said, her goal is to educate 2 million people to use her courses. So you are going to be one of those 2 million people. Excellent. And then Mankwe, can you give me a number from 1 to 23?
11.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Jackie Fullion? Are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hello, Jackie. So you, if you are the lucky winner with Mankwe. She is going to do a corporate identity update with you or your organization. If you work for a big company, then I suggest that you and Mankwe have a little chat and see how and what she can do.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
If you don't mind also dropping me an email, and then I can put you in touch with Mankwe, and then you can get that going and then give us feedback.
Okay, great. Will do.
Yeah. So Gaylin, Caro, Hayley, Mankwe, Van, thank you very much. What an insightful event. The recording will be made available on our YouTube channel. Karika will help me with that. And thank you to all of our listeners. I know that we haven't had a break at all, but it was that riveting, and really the time just flew. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and have a great one.
Thanks, Lo.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for organizing. See you soon.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Keep well.
Karika, thank you.
All good, Lauren. But
I'm
I'll
going
chat to
to,
you
what I'm going
someday.
to do is I'm gonna save the deck as well on our YouTube and put everybody's contact details there, because I can see people also want to get in touch with different people. So
Yeah, I think free marketing has never hurt anyone.
exactly. Awesome. But that was fantastic. So as soon as I get the recording tomorrow, I'll load it up and I'll share the link with our YouTube channel.
100%. And I think maybe, I don't know if we want to share maybe the individual people again on the LinkedIn group as well.
Yes, divine. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Yeah, you too, Lauren. Cheers.
Okay. Bye.